Case I'm COVID.
You have COVID?
Oh yeah, I have like hard COVID, man. I sprayed literally a whole squirt of Chanel blue in my face, and it felt like soft mist. That's how bad the COVID is.
Wow. Okay. Well, that makes sense. Um,
I couldn't smell it. I couldn't smell it. I can't taste anything. I got my beer delivered right here because I know you're
but you,
drinking too.
yeah, but you probably can't even taste it.
I can't.
That's okay.
I could have 7 of these. Cheers. Cheers, cousin.
L'chaim, l'chaim,
L'chaim.
l'shalom.
It's been a very crazy couple of days. So L'chaim, and let's kick it. Let's go.
Let's kick it. All right. Well, I haven't even told you this. I am on site here in Madison, Wisconsin, doing serious field research on what Iran will look like after it is transformed into a parking lot, after the U.S. rebuilds it in its image. I've had my cheese curds. Here's my first spotted cow of the trip. Nice
Oh,
to see you all.
yes.
Lovely
I
to be here.
I was in Wisconsin. I think January was had my maybe first spot however, and I can confirm it is one of my favorite states or places in the world ever. And we will continue to give love to Wisconsin. And thanks to all the Wisconsinites, they've been texting me over the past several weeks, just loving the love we keep giving it to them.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful place. All right, cousin. I have like a Word document up of potential
Me
things
too.
that I could like.
I do
I don't
too.
even like. This is like beyond me to
Can I
organize
start?
into a.
Can
Yeah,
I
you
start?
start, please.
We can go
Take
back
the
and forth.
reins.
We can go back and forth. I do
Wonderful. You
this.
start.
This is super quick. I always send the covers of my research reports on Twitter.
Mhm.
I cannot disclose what's inside of them because people pay a lot of money for it. So that's why we keep these podcasts minimally related to market calls. But the cover this month is a little girl about to fall through the ice, and it says "on thin ice."
Mm.
And by the way, I take a lot of time and effort to think of these covers. This one I didn't think that far from it. Like it was like, we're on thin ice, whatever. Like you can figure out what I'm talking about. Except one ex user I literally posted like all of us or just for your clients. And the reason I start this podcast with this is that sometimes it's important to just pause and remember why we do this pod to begin with. We work almost exclusively for investors and financial markets. And so, it was a genuine question by somebody following me to like know when they have to pack up their kids and like drive to a different country. And so I was like, oh, no. I meant for the markets. And then I was like, but are you sure? Are you sure? And then I saw somebody else ask you, what's the probability of World War III?
World War III.
And
It
you're
took.
like, 0.01%. Jacob's like, was it like 4 spotted cows in? Like, 0.
That was before I had even started drinking. Gosh, I mean, like we got the world. And sorry to throw shade at the people who are asking the World War III question, but my God, like how many different ways are we going to get the World War III question? Also, even though in the last podcast we took down the whole, is this all some elaborate plan to get at China? And we said no, that's stupid. It's not an elaborate plan to get at China. Somebody literally wrote in an hour after we published the last podcast and said, so is this all a plan?
Yeah.
to just combat China, and it was like, what are we doing here, guys? Like basic listening comprehension. I guess we're just not listening. Like, yeah, it's all about
that person might not be listening. Yeah, but I just wanted to also say that yes, I think we're going to be fine. Think. But I would also say that I do think there's a very large probability scenario where this becomes the equivalent of 1973 Yom Kippur War. We just don't know the capabilities of Iran. In 1973, and this is why I felt a little bit guilty of being so glib to the person asking the question, because I was like, nah, don't worry about it. This is just, degenerates who trade. Like they're the only ones that worry. You're good. And it's like, yeah, but like people really did feel the pain from 1973. So if this devolves into an energy crisis, European energy costs are going to skyrocket. Like the whole reason why they've been good, the whole reason you and I are so bullish Europe and like, oh, European energy is fine, is because they have access to LNG. Oops, LNG now has to go through the Strait too. And similarly, if oil prices go up, like the K-shaped economy narrative, the inflation narrative, the prices narrative, like, even though it might very well be disinflationary, the point is it's going to, no one's going to be happy that it's disinflationary. Let's just be very clear. The reason that increase in energy prices could actually lead to less inflation is because people don't have enough money to buy goods and services in other sectors. So none of, like, yeah, to apologies to that person. Like, now that I think about it, after half a beer, I'm like, wait a minute, it might be the medication talking or whatever, but yeah, I mean, sorry, I mean, maybe you are on thin ice too. This could tip over into the 1970s style, calamity. Now, I don't think that the world is set up in a way where we can get to 8 to 12% inflation yet again. I actually don't think that would happen, but I do think that we could have a global recession. I don't think that's crazy to say that this could, in its extreme, lead to a global recession.
Well, that's a good place to start, maybe, because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm out, or at least my base case here. And by the way, this is one of the fun things about war when you're an analyst, because once the war is on, you basically can't analyze anything. Like, you can try and keep pace with every little thing that's happening, but there's fog of war, so the information isn't good, and it's changing every single second. We're recording Tuesday night. This is coming out tomorrow morning. I'm sure we'll have 5 other different crazy reports of things
Yep.
that have happened in the meantime. But like, the job of the analyst is like, you got the model so that when the war breaks out, okay, this is what I think. And then you crack open the beer and you start watching. And, from the beginning of this, I think you and I were aligned on this. I said, I don't think this goes more than 3 weeks. I
Oh
don't see
yeah,
how
I
this
mean,
can go more than 3 weeks. And if it
right.
doesn't go more than 3 weeks, I don't know how we get to a true
Well, here's how.
1970s style energy crisis. All right, so tell me, because I don't see it if it's just 3 weeks, and I don't see it going beyond 3 weeks. So
This is great because that actually leads to the second thing I wanted to talk about. So this is as if I'm doing your job here. Like,
wonderful, isn't it nice?
all it took was for me to be very sick, not eat for 2 days, have half a beer, and I'm off. This is apparently better than coffee. Like, okay. So, this is where I think I disagreed the most with everyone I talked to. All the client calls I've had, all the conversations, even with friends and family. It's like, well, yes, but if the regime change happens, boom, we good. And so I think that where we're aligned is the regime change in Iran is not good. Like, it probably does not look the way that people think because it's regime collapse, more
Right.
likely than regime change. So the way that this could go on forever, Jacob, okay? Let me paint you a world where we've stopped using the Strait of Hormuz
Mhm.
because Iran is in a state of state collapse. It's a failed state. It's a very heterogeneous entity that has always kind of needed an authoritarian, strong, not always, of course, it had a democracy once, until the CIA decided maybe it
Until we
should.
assassinated it. Good job,
Oh,
CIA.
come on, come on.
Thank you, Dulles Brothers. Appreciate
That's
y'all.
such a Guardian narrative that we're throwing out here.
Pour one out for
Details.
Mohammed Mossadegh. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
the,
okay.
the
Pouring
details.
one out for you.
Jacob, details. But look, what I'm getting at here is that, this is an entity, a political entity, historical entity that's always had a very strong centralized government, and now Israel, the United States of America, decided to eliminate that. Nothing comes to replace it. In fact, the place disperses into factions, and some factions are pro-Israeli and pro-American and pro-West. Some are, pro-whatever, and some are just anti-everything. They're ideological, they're zealots, they're remnants of IRGC, I don't know. But they hide out in the mountains of the South, facing the coastline, and keep firing $2,000 homemade drones at the Strait. And eventually, the world has to spend $100 billion building pipelines to Salalah in Oman. Hey, if you're looking for real estate and you're a sovereign wealth fund, maybe start looking around there. Good port in the Indian Ocean or the Red Sea in order to divert all the energy and the traffic out of the Strait. And we actually just stop using the Strait forever because Iran stops being stable forever. There's your, in the next 12 months, that's a global recession. In the next 10 years, it's a world where we don't care what happens to Iran. They can become Afghanistan as far as the world is concerned. They become irrelevant. completely, and nobody cares. But
Yeah.
it's a transition, Jacob, that I think would require then a recession right now. It would require an immense amount of um, upfront costs. And so this is why I wanted to talk about a regime change, because I know you and I are aligned on this. And by the way, this is where I think you and I were maybe not aligned. I'm a simple guy. If the Houthis in Yemen were able to close the Red Sea for 2 years with homemade drones, the Houthis in Yemen, by the way, they control like 28% of Yemen. You know what I mean? They're not even able to control the entire country. And they were able to close the Red Sea. I assume that if that happens on X, then what happens on Y is the same thing. In other words, Iran will be able to close the Strait of Hormuz. They're 90 million, more sophisticated, even closer. I think the Houthis control actually very little, if any, of Yemeni coastline. The point I'm getting at is that, I don't know. Like, this is one of those things. If the Charlotte Hornets can beat the Celtics, I think they can beat the Lakers, kind of a thing. And I don't know. Tell me. I mean, maybe I'm wrong on their capabilities of drones. Maybe I'm wrong about how much drones have changed the game. But I do think that the way this gets really bad is that everyone's looking at Iran's air defense systems and capabilities. Everyone's looking at their ability to kill Israeli civilians, which is paltry and pathetic. They've had no success on anything. And they assume that they will not be able to interdict shipping. But the fact is that there's an asymmetry in military technology. Yes, Iran is incapable of fighting off Israeli fighter jets. They're incapable of dealing any kind of damage with ballistic missiles. But it doesn't mean that they can't launch what are effectively advanced children's toys at tankers for the next 10 years, if they so chose.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to break apart there. I think the first thing to say is, it's only day 4, so this is going to get worse for Iran. But there are no signs that the regime is near collapse. Like, I'm impressed. I'm impressed with the regime coherence. They have a distributed, multi-layered network. They've got local commanders who are apparently authorized to do whatever they need to do without, direct approval. All of the reports about the supreme leader and all of the senior officials picking their successors and preparing for something like this, that all seems to be holding. If anything, there's a rally around the flag sort of effect happening within Iran. So maybe another week of this, you start to see the regime coming apart. But if that's the scariest scenario, it's not really there. I would also caution us, or I would caution anyone on taking a victory lap about Iran's capabilities, because I think this is now a race against time and capacity on the US and Israeli side versus regime coherence on the Iranian side. And if they can keep themselves in the game and keep themselves relatively coherent within some kind of plan, they're not firing their best shots yet. They're not firing their best shots yet because they know that, at the beginning of the conflict is when missile defense in the Gulf and when the U.S. and when Israel is going to be the best. So they're going to launch.
That.
Yeah,
pause
please
that.
Go.
Say that again, but slower.
Yeah, I know, slower. They have not launched their best shit. They're saving their best shit. They're firing the crappy stuff to overwhelm all of the interceptors and have us use up the interceptors. They're firing $20,000 rockets at $4 million interceptors, and it's taking 10, 11 interceptors per rocket that they're firing over. So anybody who wants to say, oh, it's paltry, they're not killing Israelis, A, they're killing some, and B, that's not the goal right now. The goal is saturate them.
Yeah.
Empty the interceptors, and then we'll show you the hypersonics.
No, we don't know that for a fact.
No, we don't know for a fact. But, if they are coherent and resilient, I got to think that that's what they're playing towards. That's the only thing they've got.
That would be diabolical.
But it's the strategy, and that's what most Iranian security experts are saying. There's this new narrative out there, too, about, what is the U.S. doing here? And I think Ian Bremmer was the first one I saw say this, but it's actually out there a little bit, that maybe what the U.S. is doing is they're going to seize Karg Island, which is what 90% of Iranian oil eventually traverses through before it goes out.
So they want to
back. Well, yeah, and they want to control the oil, and then you're going to have leverage over the Iranian regime itself. That would be interesting, and I don't see why the U.S. couldn't just seize. I mean, that shouldn't be that hard to seize an island. And then the last point I just wanted to make, based on what you said, was about the Houthis. Yes, the Houthis were able to stop the Red Sea shipping, but it wasn't because they closed it as if it was a gate or because they were bombing every ship. It's because insurance companies wouldn't insure ships.
Yeah,
that were
but that's
going through it.
semantic.
And well, no, it's not. And because oil was so cheap, it really wasn't that big of a deal to just reroute around. And we were just getting back to the point where ships were starting to go back through, which goes to, President Trump's tweet, just a couple hours ago. I don't know did you see this one about how he's ordered the United
Yeah.
States Development Finance Corporation to provide insurance for financial security of all maritime trade, especially energy traveling through the Gulf. And he says that the U.S. Navy is going to start escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz,
All right, time
quote
out.
unquote, as soon as possible.
All right, so time out.
Time out.
Everyone on the show knows that I don't have TDS. We all know that. In fact, I am guilty of having TDS DS.
DS, yeah.
Right. So I have Trump derangement syndrome, which one of our
and for listeners who are worried, but I am your surrogate TDSer. I'm
Right.
happy to
Jacob,
play that role for you all.
Jacob has TDS, just pure like original strain. I have what one guy said, intellectuals who have become so obsessed with showing that they don't have TDS that they have derangement syndrome about showing they don't have Trump derangement syndrome.
Exactly.
So I just want to preface that. So I've defended Trump vastly more times than you have. I like to always make this point before I'm about to make fun of the White House.
Oh, this is my favorite time. Let's go.
All right, turn the TikTok camera on. Pete, I hope you're listening. All right, I'm drinking a dry Asahi, so clearly not very American of me.
It's actually very American of you. They wouldn't be making that if we hadn't conquered them and bombed them into Hello Kitty land. Don't worry.
America, cut the track. Cut the track. All right, listen. Don't be fucking sending tweets about how you're going to ensure shipping on March 3rd, 72 hours after you start bombing Iran. Don't be planting stories in CNN about how you're going to arm the Kurds in Iran.
Ooh, I hold on. I have a special.
Oh,
yeah. This is the same guy who just abandoned the Syrian Kurds. Like you left the Syrian Kurds to their fate, but now the Iranian Kurds, we got weapons for you,
buddy.
Yes, please. Sorry,
buddy.
Go on.
I became an American in the great Republic of Texas, and in Texas
forever.
We have a good idiomatic expression. It might not be Texan, but like it's been appropriated as Texan. That you don't close the barn door after the horse is left. Okay? So you can't be planting a story in CNN that you're going to arm the Kurds 72 hours after you stop. If you're competent, you've armed them 6 months ago. Number one. Oh, no. Now some Trump fan is going to be like, yeah, how do you know they didn't? Come on, bro. Like, this is how these leaks work. They're trying to show you that they know what they're doing. And this insurance thing, like, Jacob, how long is it going to take? And by the way, if you're conservative, if you're a fan of President Trump, you cannot criticize me for what I'm about to say. How long is it going to take the goddamn federal government to set up this thing? If I'm a captain of a VLCC right the fuck now in the Straits, is there a number I can call? Like, is there a White House dispatch? Like, hey, so you guys said you're going to insure me. Can you, because I'm looking at a Zodiac boat with like 14 dudes with beards, and they're coming. So I need some fucking insurance. Oh, no, don't worry about it. Esther, in the Department of Energy, we put Esther in charge, and she's going to be right on it, man. Can you just fax your location to this number? Guys. So, you know what I say to that, Jacob? I say to that, don't make me laugh. You are right. There's no gate to the Red Sea. There's no gate to the Strait of Hormuz. But yes, this is how you shut it. This is called shutting it through the insurance thing. And so President Trump tweeting this 72 hours after the attack has started it just tells me they were not ready for this. It's not prepared. Yeah. It wasn't prepared. The fact that there's only 2 aircraft carriers. Like, what happened to the Schwarzkopf doctrine? Why are there 4 aircraft carriers? Who
Look,
was it?
I'm glad you're coming around to that it's amateur hour. One of the hardest things about Trump, I mean, this is the TDSDS. Like and this is actually something I did a rare thing this afternoon. I wanted to see what all the other commentators were saying. We've talked about this before. I usually don't listen to other
We don't
commentators,
contaminate. Yeah.
but I felt pretty good in my model, and I felt good. So I went and watched Fareed, and I went and watched Ian, and I watched Peter, I watched George, like I watched everyone, and every single one of them
He's making
was,
a big point. Like there's a
yeah,
big picture.
the strategic
China.
impulse of blah 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 blah. Like this, President Trump doesn't have strategy. This is not what he's doing. Like
He
he
has
just
tactics.
decided that he
No.
wanted to do this.
Pause.
He's moved the
Pause.
goalposts 5 different times. Like it's nothing more than, oh, I did it in Venezuela, I'm going to do it here, and then I'm going to keep
That's
doing
what
it because
happened.
it's awesome. Yeah,
That's what happened. That's why I went long oil and told my clients to do it 2 months ago, purely because of what you just said. I called it the Chuck Norris Premium on the show.
you did.
On this show. And it's because Venezuela went so smoothly. There's no other explanation for this. And by the way, if you're connecting the fucking dots, you're trying to do it to make the administration look good. This is post facto dot connecting. It's nonsense. This doesn't hurt China. Like, I mean, marginally, sure, whatever. You know, like they lose their $8 discount, on Iranian crude. Guess what? They buy 83% of it from other countries. Like Kuwait and Saudi Arabia will step up. You know what I mean? Like, anyways, look. This is where we might disagree, right? Is that the effectiveness of the drone thing is unclear, Jacob. Like, your counter to me could be that the world just didn't care about the Red Sea. And then we just didn't put our effort. We didn't actually put all the capabilities we have in countering those Houthi drones. I'll buy that. But I don't buy that Red Sea wasn't shut. You see what I mean?
It was shut. I guess my only point is there's an alternative to the Red Sea. You don't have to use the Red Sea.
But no, that's the counter to me. You can use that. Yeah. You can say that's why we didn't care about it, right? Like if we put the full emphasis of the U.S. Army now on getting ships through the Strait, we'll defend those drone swarms. But the thing is, the Houthis never sent swarms of drones. They took pot shots,
Mm-hmm.
Like Iranians have the ability to send 500 drones on one ship. Now I've done the math. I don't want to go through it. I've done the math. F-18, F-35, how many rockets they all have, Aegis class, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, the U.S. Navy can defend a VLCC even if there's 500 drones coming at it. It would take one aircraft carrier and maybe one Aegis-enabled vessel. What I just said is fucking insane.
Yeah, it's pretty insane.
It's insane because you know how many resources? There's 2 aircraft carriers. So what is the U.S. going to do? Get 2 VLCCs out at a time? This is it's going to cost more to defend these than the oil that's on them. You know what I mean?
This is why I'm not worried about the disaster scenarios, because what's going to happen is at some point in the next 2 weeks, President Trump is going to come out and say, I have achieved my objectives. We have destroyed the missile program, and I now have somebody that I can negotiate with in Iran, and they will not have a nuclear program. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and things are going to be fine.
Okay, but
and by any normal analytical metric, he's not going to have achieved anything, but it doesn't matter for him because all he has to do is say that he achieved it and negotiate.
I need to do my TDSDS public service announcement on behalf of the White House. First and foremost,
we need a little noise that plays every time you're about to do it, in the Hunger Games, where before the update comes for the fall and and then boom.
Yes. Or you can just use AI to change my voice into Trump's voice.
We could do that too.
That's
God help me.
All right, hold on a second. All right. So here's what I hate about Taco, and I said this before. I don't like the term Taco. Trump doesn't chicken out. He sets expectations that he's going to get us to the moon. He gets us to the roof of the house, and he brings the ladder. Right?
Yep.
But that doesn't mean he didn't not get us higher than we were. It's not the moon. But Jacob, do you want to be on the moon? There's no atmosphere. Here on the roof of the house, it's nice and cool. You see far away. We have a nice little tiki bar. So what I'm getting at is that when you say that there would have been no achievement whatsoever, I think that's unfair. Was there regime change? Is Iran now the land of milk and honey, as it was under the Shah, as my friends in the diaspora told me? No, it's not. But I think objectively speaking, we all agree that the nuclear program and the ballistic missile program are massively eroded after these 3 days. Right? Like, we all agree with that, correct?
We do, and that's actually another thing I wanted to ask you about. And you told me I got my maple syrup privileges revoked for saying this, but I'm sure you saw Mark Carney's statement about how Canada supports this and blah blah blah, and the UK is on board and France is on board. It's only the socialist government of Spain that is like, fuck y'all, get the planes out of here. We don't support this. This is multipolar. We thought we were done with all of this moral grandstanding. All of these different countries who are sort of cheering the United States and Israel on here, it doesn't make sense to me. Like,
Why?
this is the U.S. Well, because it's an illegal war.
Oh yeah, right.
The goalposts are being moved. It's just like, it's a great opportunity to say, see, this is the multipolar world that we're talking about. This is the reason that we need to double down on self-sufficiency in our industrial complex. And Macron kind of did that. He had his big thing. I'm sure you saw the presentation in front of the French nuclear submarine. Did you listen to their rendition of Le Marseillaise? It was very subdued. It was almost like we were like Benedictine monks from the 9th century. I was expecting a little more Casablanca, and it was just, they were all just flat and sort of.
The nuclear submarine was very phallic in the background.
Yeah,
it was just strong. You know what I mean?
But I thought that was cool. And then the next day, it's, oh, and by the way, the Charles de Gaulle is on its way. So, why?
Okay. Time out. I mean, look, it's like, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to pretend that there isn't a global energy crisis afoot? Like, I mean, I think
there isn't for France. What does France need?
Well, I don't know, but France is part of Europe. I mean, he has to defend the interests of the continent. Like, I think it's appropriate for them to send the Charles de Gaulle. Like, look, listen. It's bizarre because, what you're saying here is that was actually also on my list. By the way, this is amazing. We're just like going through my list. Is if you read this is why we're cousins.
This is why we're cousins. We're riffing. And this is also like, it really is the nature of, like, in some sense, like a war like this. I don't mean to make light of the death and suffering that's happening. Okay. So I'm not making light of it. It's just like, when a war breaks off and you're an analyst, like, this is the time you put your feet up and you relax a little bit, because you've done the work. It's either right or wrong. Your framework is in place, and you just watch, because there's nothing else to do right now. You just got to trust what you did before. So that's where I'm at. I'm loose. I'm drinking the beer and like, let's talk.
Listen. I think France sending the Charles de Gaulle, which is, by the way, for those of you who don't know, the only other country, well, other than China too, but really the only other country that has global power projection capability is France. Ironically, it's not really Russia. It's France.
Or the UK, ironically.
And the UK, although, yeah, they've just recovered it after not having it for a while. But what are you supposed to do? I mean, America does something that's naughty and illegal, but it creates a new reality. You have to go and try to help keep the Strait of Hormuz open.
It's not about that. It's about, why is the statement not, we protest the illegal violation of Iranian sovereignty and not letting negotiations take their course. Of course, this Iranian regime is bad or whatever, but we also don't support the United States doing this. There's been a certain level of, yes, we oppose Iran. Iran is terrible. Like, China is the only one that is saying, like, WTF? Like, why? Like, you violated the sovereignty of a country, and for what? Like, you were literally in the middle of negotiating with them. That poor Omani negotiator went on all the television programs and was like, "We're making great progress. We think we're really, really close." And then the next day, you're just bombing them into literal. Like, I mean, like, it would seem like an like, if I was Mark Carney, I would be like, "See, this is why we're doing what I'm doing." And by the way, we support the Americans knocking off the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime sucks, but this is exactly what I said at Davos, why we're doing all this. Like, this is the world order that we live in right now. Why not just say that?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think maybe it's necessary to bring attention to yourself. So my theory with Spain, by the way, it's a really good one. So you're basically talking the Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez of the Socialist Party. He is going to have face election before mid-2027, and currently in the polls he is flagging. So the center-right PP and the right-wing Vox are together would basically account for more than 50% of the vote. So he's in trouble. He's in big, big trouble. And so I think he wants Trump to punish him. You know, I think this is what he wants. He wants the spotlight. He's like, I want some of that Mark Carney bump. You know, I want the Trump bump. So I think that's why he's doing that. But I don't know. I just didn't think of it as that big of a deal. And actually, it's interesting that you point this.
It's not that big of a deal. It's me asking for consistency from people whose job it is not to be consistent. So, like, I get it. Spain also can do this because Spain. This is why Spain was relatively insulated from Russia invading Ukraine too.
Yeah,
they don't get Russian oil and they don't get Middle Eastern LNG. They've doubled down on renewables and whatever gas they need, they get from Algeria. Like, they just don't care. So they can just be like, fine, you guys were idiots for betting your geopolitical energy on these other markets.
Hold on a second, Jacob.
Oh, I'm really pushing your buttons today. Yes. What am I holding on to?
Did you say that alternative energy is not completely bogus? What?
I know. Shocking.
Crazy.
Can you believe it? Should I take out my Sierra Club card membership? It's probably somewhere over there.
All right. So look, here's what I wanted to say though. The rules-based order thing is very interesting to me. Because, you know, I had a client who lost their mind. You know, their like neck vein was popping on this. And it's like, look, the US just did this. You know, like, was it real? Did they call this a special military operation? Like, you lost your mind on that too, right?
I did indulge myself in a tweet. Yeah, they called it a special combat operation, I believe, was the exact. I'll get you the exact phraseology in just a second, but keep talking.
So can you explain to our listeners what the context of that was? Because is that real? Like, this isn't Twitter just.
No. When President Trump announced the operation, he described it that the United States had begun major combat operations in Iran, and that is how the United States is describing it. So they're basically saying it's not a war. And they have to say that it's not a war because it would be illegal for the president of the United States to declare war without Congress approving it. So we have to maintain this pleasant fiction that it's a special combat operation. And the White House has repeatedly now clarified that it is not a war; it is a special combat operation.
It's just,
you know, sometimes I do have TDS. This has nothing to do with TDS. Like, the first person who broke this was Truman, and it's literally every single president since then. And part of this was, you know, it was born of the nuclear age. They were worried that the president wouldn't have time to go to Congress to get war approved if the Soviets fired off the nuclear missiles. So the president was given more leeway in deploying the U.S. military to secure American interests. But this is not that. This is very clearly a war. And the Constitution is very clear that Congress declares war, not the executive. And we just don't care.
So
like we didn't care with Biden, just like we didn't care with Obama, just like we didn't care with Iraq 2.0, like none of it. So
I'm just trying. It's just there's like something about that. What is it called again?
A special combat. I'm sorry, major combat operations. Major combat operations.
Just something in my mind just got triggered. Maybe it's the COVID brain, but it's almost like I've heard that before recently. The special something. What is it? You know, I'm just searching for it. Who else might have used something like that similarly when I can see the face. It's kind of short, lots of plastic surgery. What's his name? Oh, shit. That's right. So wait, we're not pretending that we're not using the Kremlin playbook now. You know? By the way, I don't know why Russia just doesn't call it a fucking war. You're Russia! Right?
Well, Russia has bigger problems right now. This is another thing on my list. Ukraine really going after it. I mean, bombing, what was it? Novorossiysk, which is like, what, 700,000 barrels per day, and basically causing... you know, that oil terminal to suspend oil loadings, and the United States is like, hey, please don't bomb Russian oil right now. And Zelensky is like, I'm bombing Russian oil right now. This is the time. You think I don't have the cards? Who's the captain now, President Trump? I have the card. We're gonna hit Russian oil with every single inch we've got.
Sorry.
This is wonderful.
You want me not to bomb in this special military operation? It's not a war. It's not a war. Not a war. Jacob,
It's okay.
not a war.
I'll put on a suit and I'll come and say thank you very much for your support, Mr. President. I will not be listening to you, but we really appreciate all the support. Like
It's
I've
just a
learned my
special
lesson.
military operation, not a war, not a war, not an actual war. So look, first of all, there's so many things going on. I think that we've entered a world where everything is just for lulls. I mean, like the fact that in the United States of America, there's the same dance that there was in Russia. And honestly, I don't understand why there is one. It's not like Putin needs congressional approval, Duma's approval to do whatever the fuck he wants. So just call it a war. Oh, it's not a war because what? Like a million Russians didn't die? Cool story, bro. And then on the US side, like whatever, man. Like the Supreme Court says tariffs are illegal. We're going to have tariffs. Like just, but sure, it's
Well, I don't know if you saw this, but about Spain. So President Trump was asked about Spain, and he basically said, "This is terrible. Spain is treating us very badly. We're going to embargo them because the Supreme Court says I have the ability to embargo them. Like I can destroy the trade with the
sick.
nation." And he had, I can't do tariffs, but I can destroy them. I'm going to embargo them. And he had Jamison Greer and Scott Bessent in front of him and asked them, "Right, guys, I can do that." And Jamison Greer said, "Here, I'll quote him." "Well, sir, I think we'll talk about it with you. We know you can use it, and if you need to use it to assure national and economic security, we'll do it, sir." That's the end quote. And then Scott Bessent said, "Yes, the Supreme Court has affirmed your embargo powers under IEPA, and that we will begin investigations on how to penalize Spain
Yeah, so just call it a
under
war,
other
bro.
trade
Like
laws."
it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like let's stop pretending anything cares. Now, I do want to talk about this rule-based system though,
Yeah.
because to me, as a hardcore realist, all these books behind me are basically just realist.
Hmm.
To me, I would never say that it was really a rules-based order. It was
Well,
just
no.
that there was one country that was very clearly in charge. And so nobody just messed with it. So what we're watching now is just what happens when there's no one country that can enforce a certain set of rules. So yeah, multiple countries get to do what they want in terms of their rules. So this is, I think, the mistake that people see. It doesn't mean that the world will descend into complete anarchy. Power still matters. The reason that the world was stable, more or less, obviously, a lot of people died, like Rwandan genocide killed millions. Yugoslavia fell apart in the Civil War. There was a Operation Desert Storm 1, and then later 2. But between like 1985 and 2010, the only country that could do crazy stuff was America.
Yeah.
Bombing of Serbia was illegal by international law. Sorry to bring it up. I know nobody gives a
Well,
fuck. That's
well,
cool.
no.
I've
E-
gotten over it.
Every single U.S. war since World War II has been an illegal war.
Right. So just to be clear, but the world was more stable because there was only one country that could really do that. If you were like Slobodan Milosevic, he was like, I'm a regional hegemon. Boom. No, you're not. You're Saddam Hussein, and you're like, the Americans said I could do it. No, you can't. So like, that's why the world looked like it followed rules, but it didn't. It just couldn't do anything unless the
Yeah.
US did it. So now we're in a world where, yes, more countries can do stuff like that, including America, which always could. But let's pump the brakes on like, holy fuck, this means everybody's going to invade everyone. No. There's still like the obvious rules that matter, which is power. So not everyone's going to invade everyone. It's just going to be those that can.
Well, and
So,
this is why World War III is not going to happen, because China and Russia are not coming to China and Russia are not coming to Iran's aid. Nobody's coming to Iran's aid. Like nobody's going to fight for them.
but let's talk about that.
Okay, talk. Yeah.
But why are they not?
Because they don't have the power to do so. They're not there yet. So in that sense, the world is not as multipolar as we think. I mean, I would make a very strong argument that the hegemon having to resort to bombing people to do what they want is a clear sign of imperial decline. But we also live in a world where China doesn't have power projection capacity to open the Strait of Hormuz, and certainly not to tango with the U.S. Navy. It has no chance of doing so.
Maybe
India
not.
doesn't. Russia doesn't. Like, there's no chance of them showing up. That's what World War I and II was. That was major powers with major militaries gambling, I can beat you in a fight to the death. Nobody's doing that with the United States.
See, maybe not in Iran in the Persian Gulf, where the U.S. has pre-positioned significant troops. But I don't think that the argument you just made works in Taiwanese straits. I don't think the argument you made works on Russian periphery. I mean, obviously, your argument falls apart in Ukraine because they did invade Ukraine. They did tangle with US technology, and notice that the United States of America did not dare to tangle with Russia.
Well, that's what I mean. There's no direct conflict. Like
But
to have World War
but
III,
it's
you have
not
to have the
because
major
all right,
powers
but
thinking that they can confront each other,
no,
not
but I
through
just
proxies, not anything
no,
else.
no,
Just like, okay,
but
yeah.
what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get to the logic of the point you made, because you said, well, maybe the world is not actually multipolar because no one wants to tangle with the United States of America. But let's just be very clear. Bahrain and Qatar are basically the 51st and the 52nd state. Like, they just are. You know, the Fifth Fleet is in Bahrain. Qatar has one of the largest air force bases in the world. So, okay, fine. China and Russia are not stupid enough to challenge the US in the Persian Gulf, just as America did not send troops to Ukraine. Neither did
Yeah.
anybody else. So, what is the actual defining difference this time around? I think we are at a point in the world where World War III would have started maybe 100 years ago. I think we might be. The difference is that the stakes of messing with this stuff are so much greater because of nuclear weapons. This is why I actually think this is an important point. I actually think that we might be stuck in this multipolar, messy world for like the next 150, 200, 300, maybe for as long as humanity exists, because nuclear weapons make it very, very difficult for countries to challenge each other and then put to rest a dying empire.
Yeah, I hear you. I disagree with you. I think we'll get to the point where the conventional forces of, like, when China thinks its conventional forces can handle a challenge from the United States, then we'll be in that sort of world. And I don't think we're close. We may get there sooner rather than later because of robotics and automation and AI. But I don't think we're close to there. I don't even think we're there if something happens in the Taiwan
Fair.
Strait. I don't think China can take Taiwan.
But let me counter that. Let me counter that
please.
again with Ukraine. The United States of America has conventional forces that I personally think would have fucking made mincemeat of Russia and Ukraine in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because what Russia tried to do in Ukraine is like what American generals like have wet dreams about. Like, oh my God, fucking tank battle? Like, give it to me.
That's what they were trained for.
Like, this is like, fuck yes. You know,
I feel bad for them. Imagine being trained for something your entire life and it never happens.
And you're watching and you're like, give it, please let me go. And you know what? I think the Americans would have not used the javelins because it would be too easy. They'd be like, no. Pretend like we don't have them. Pretend like we don't have them. You know, it's like Larry Bird being like, yo, son, I'm going to fucking play with my left hand. And by the way, I know I'm going to get all the hate mail from like Russian like fans. They're going to be like, no, bro, like Russia. Like, shut up. Okay, you had a 40-kilometer line out of Kiev because it was a traffic jam because the Ukrainians blew up the tank in the front. It was like worse than the traffic in Los Angeles, for God's sakes. So what am I getting at?
I think you overestimate the size of our Russian listenership, but I hope to see the letters.
I'm going to get death threats from the Kremlin. But look, what am I getting at? I'm getting at the fact that you're saying that once Chinese conventional military can threaten America, they will take Taiwan. American conventional military would have made Swiss cheese out of Russia. And it did not intervene in Ukraine. And I think that the differentiator is nuclear weapons. So maybe the Chinese will feel comfortable invading Taiwan anyways, because, you know, Americans are not going to defend Taiwan. It's now the 51st state with nuclear weapons. But I think that there is a limit to how much you can target these very powerful regional militaries, and they've become more emboldened, particularly in Russia and Ukraine case, to do something militaristic. Now, the counter to my point is that America was a hegemon from 1985 to 2010, at least, even though these countries had nuclear weapons. So what changed? Why can't the world go back to being, unipolar? And my argument would be like, it absolutely can. If the United States of America reasserts the level of dominance it's had, in the 90s, sure, like it will just go back. It's just difficult to go back to that point because while China and Russia may not have global power projection capability, they may not be able to come to the Strait of Hormuz and say who gets to pass. They sure as fucking hell have regional capability to do that.
I actually think the counter to what you're saying is that Ukraine was not and will never be an existential interest for the United States. If the Russians had come for Greenland, then I think you would have seen the U.S. deploy conventional military forces to defend it. But for Ukraine, it was like, I mean, the United States basically gave up. I mean, they basically withdrew all their embassy staff and said, sorry, good luck. And then when the Ukrainians managed to stay in the fight for a couple of days, they were like, okay, we'll send you some weapons. We'll send you some more things. We'll send you some intelligence. Let's see how far you can push
Yeah,
this.
that's a good point.
But if the Russians took Ukraine, like, who cares if the Russians take Ukraine? It didn't do anything to the United States. You're only going to get World War III when powers are willing to risk conventional warfare over issues of existential interest. And that's just not going to happen in the Persian Gulf. It's not existential, I think, for China. And even if it was, they don't have the power protection capacity to get there. Now, 15 years from now, if they keep modernizing at their current pace and if the US keeps overextending itself, like, okay, like we have an interesting case there. And then we'll see if the nuclear question does rein things in. But I just don't think we're close to that level quite yet. By the way, I have a trivia question for you. How many countries do you think that the United States has bombed under the Trump administration?
Under the Trump administration.
Under the Trump administration, how many countries has the United States bombed?
I'm going to say 6.
The answer is 10. This is one of the reasons
shit.
we're so low on missiles and interceptors and everything else like that.
What?
There are also 4 of these countries are countries that were also bombed by Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and George Bush.
Okay, those are standard. Those are the starting 5. That's Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Yemen.
Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, not Syria, not bombed by George Bush.
Shit.
Somalia is your missing.
Come on. Well, I want that stricken from the record. Somalia is no longer a real country. So
there are also 3 countries that only President Trump has bombed, that none of his predecessors have bombed. Can you guess which 3 they are? Spoiler alert. One of them is Iran. There are 2 others.
Okay, Venezuela,
and
oof. Man, this is really testing my credibility as a geopolitical maven.
No, it's not, because nobody cares about this.
Yeah, but we do. We're supposed to care.
Yeah, but literally 0 of your clients have asked you about why the United States was bombing Nigeria. Of all countries.
Come on. You know what? You know why I feel okay with this? Because our Lord and Savior Bill Simmons really doesn't know every roster of an NBA team. Like I really found that up. You know, like it's hilarious. So I can forget Nigeria, but
yeah, and you've gotten has either one of us gotten a question about Nigeria at any point in our careers in the past 10 years?
I have. Yes.
You have.
Yes.
You have.
Oh,
Okay. Well, I stand
every
corrected.
election. Every election. Yeah. It used to matter, but you know, it's less and less so. Which, you know, good for Nigeria. That's a sign. Like nobody cares about Belgian elections anymore, mainly because they didn't have a government for 2.5 years and they were fine. Okay, so this is fine. My only counter to you about your point about existential risk is that that's very World War II centric. Like World War I didn't really start because of existential risk. It was very much a war of choice, you know, and that does make me a little concerned about the current.
It was the alliance. It was the alliance network.
Right, but I know, but like everybody kind of thought, like, well, we'll fight it out. We'll go back by December. You know, the whole thing, the meme.
Yes, you're right. Nobody thought it was going to be a long war, and in that sense, this conflict does have a whiff of that. You know, the fact that you and I are here and saying it's 3 weeks. It's only going to be 3 weeks. Like,
let's have a beer. It'll be fine. Oh, somebody asked if we were all on thin ice, and I said, "Oh no, dear pleb, you're fine. This is just my high finance clients." Yeah, no. Yeah. This could all look very bad in a year. But it's okay. If it's World War III, no one will ever listen to this recording 12 months from now.
Yeah, well, that would be sad if we had World War III just as the podcast was really kicking into gear. Okay. I mean, obviously all the death and destruction would also be horrible, but has anyone considered that our podcast would do terribly if they started launching nuclear warheads?
You know, just to be clear, you and I have no incentive to forecast World War III. So everybody listening to this, you guys got to know one big glaring problem with Jacob and myself. we do this for a living, right? With like real investors, and we like put stuff out there. If you forecast World War III and you're wrong, somebody lost a lot of money because they went to all cash, or I don't know, bought a fucking bunker that you can't really repurpose into a pool. So like all of these are really problems for our clients. But imagine if you get it right. Like what's the upside? Nothing.
Oh, there's a lot of money to be made in war. No, I think there
World War
would be.
III?
Well, as long as it stays not nuclear. If it's nuclear, yes, then you're right.
Well,
Then
I
we have
assume a World War III will be nuclear. What kind of World War III is this?
I mean, World War. I mean, yeah, I hear you. I would assume that we wouldn't use nuclear weapons, but what do I know? This goes back to that thing that I sent you about this article in the New Scientist. I got this from Van Jackson's podcast. I love Van Jackson's podcast, by the way. I don't agree with all of it, but I find him to be a very, very sharp observer and somebody who challenges what I think. But he talked about how there were these researchers, I think at the University of Oxford, King's College London, and they set 3 leading large language models against each other. So GPT 5.2, Claude Sonnet 4, and Gemini 3 Flash in simulated war games. And they played 21 games, 329 turns. That's a lot of turns if you're not a war game nerd. They produced around 780,000 words describing the reasoning behind their decisions. And 95% of the time, 95%, the AI models just went to nukes. Like they were given an escalation ladder and they just started nuking each other.
I wonder why they did that.
5% didn't. So I'm playing for the 5% world war with no nukes, where suddenly, geopolitics.
Maybe because they like cold climate and are impervious to radiation. I don't fucking know. Like, yeah, but sure. Let's let them be in charge.
I mean, aren't we on our way to letting them be in charge?
No, that's a different podcast. But look, no, I think fine. We can disagree on this. The point is, I think that I don't think that the world requires multiple global superpowers to be multipolar. That's kind of my point. I think regional hegemony in itself is an impediment to a country having global. So like, in other words, US power projection stops where these regional hegemonies begin. And that's where the clashes are. Regardless, I think what's your takeaway here for listeners? I mean, what are you watching for the next 24 hours that we're not going to be recording? Since we'll be doing this.
No, it's why we're not going to make 24-hour takes. I actually have a couple more things I want to throw at you. The first is I wanted to do a whole section of overreactions, but I could only come up with one really good one. Maybe you can come up with another one when I tell you this. But overreaction. Dubai's safe haven status is over.
Nice. I like that one. Let's talk about that. I love this one. This is a good one. I want to write about this. All right, so why do you think it's overreaction? I mean, you've been kind of shitting on my GCC takes for a while. I like that you're now that it's become consensus, you're ready to plant the flag and defend.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm using this as a foil to talk about it. So the overreaction take is that Dubai's time as a financial center safe haven is over. To your point, I'm a hater. I never thought it was a safe haven in the first place. You're only going there if you can't get into Singapore or somewhere else. This is like if you're some, no offense to those that are in this demographic, but if you're some Russian oligarch and you're trying to get your money out of Russia and you're trying to have a good life, you're not going to Singapore, you're going to Dubai. If you are some Indian mogul who's trying to get your money away from India and not be taxed by the Indian government, like you're going to go hang out in Dubai. Dubai is probably the cleanest place. You're going to move your money.
Give me two more examples. So Russian oligarch, got it. I'm just writing this down. Yes, Indian mogul. What else? Who else? How
about Chinese triad member or Chinese drug lord or something like that?
It doesn't have to be that. It can be just like a tax avoidance, high net worth individual. Why do they have to be like? We don't have
because there has to be something nefarious about what they're doing. Because if you're just the normal person like that, you could just go to Vancouver and start buying up real estate like you've been doing for a long time.
Can you though?
Well, you used to be able to. They're starting to crack down, but there was a period of decades.
Give me two more examples. So Russian, Indian, Chinese. What else? Yes.
2 more examples. I don't know. If you're let's say you're a former dictator of a country in the region and you've just fled.
Middle East. Let's say like in Iran.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyone else?
How about if El Mencho wasn't assassinated, and he was trying to get out of Dodge. If you're a Mexican drug cartel leader, seems like Dubai might be a nice place to park some of your cash and get it clean.
All right, Jacob. So let me retort now.
Jacob, let me retort, please.
Okay. Thank you. So your 5 examples are Russia, India, China, and Mexico, and Iran.
Yeah.
So we're talking 1.4 billion plus 1.4 plus Russia, 140. So 1.4 plus 1.4, 2.8, 140. So let's say 3. And then let's add 93.1. And then Mexico. So you're talking 3.2 billion people.
Yeah.
Almost half of the world population. Let's throw Brazil to that. Let's throw Argentina. Let's throw Chile. Let's throw Africa. What am I getting at? If Dubai and Abu Dhabi were going to replace Singapore and Hong Kong in attracting Western capital and then using human knowledge and IP to deploy that Western capital to emerging markets like Indonesia or Thailand, which is what Singapore was used for when you talk about financial capital. If that was their game, then you're right. This is the end. Pack up your bags. If you're listening to this from Abu Dhabi and Dubai, pack your bags right now. Take your kids out of the American and British schools. Get out, because your business model is over. If the whole point was to attract Western capital and then do something with it, right? Like add some knowledge to that capital and then deploy it, then it's over. But what you've just pointed out in your examples, and by the way, you don't have to be a nefarious person. You might just not like the security situation in Sao Paulo. As one of my clients who runs a family office in Brazil told me, hey, I'm going to move the headquarters to Abu Dhabi of my family office. It's not because you're trying to, do something nefarious. The tax regime is awesome. Private property laws are awesome. And security is awesome. And
except for when Iran starts to rain missiles and rockets and drones down and you can't get out and everything is blocked up.
And this is where we come down to what is your forecast, Jacob Shapiro of Geopolitical Cousins. If your forecast is that this is going to last 3 weeks, and in those 3 weeks, the United States and Israel are going to basically mow down Iran's capabilities, if I'm a family office in Sao Paulo, fuck yes. And by the way, if this is your rain, then you've never been in a rainforest, my friend. You know what I mean? They hit the palm. No, they didn't. Some fragment hit the palm. Relax. It's not I was why did they hit the Fairmont? Why? I stay at the Fairmonts. Some IRGC commander was like, they had terrible service. The concierge gave me Chinese. I asked for sushi.
Well, I think it was, or was it Bahrain? I forget. One of them, they actually thought that they were U.S. service members there. It turned out to be true. They had good intelligence.
Yeah, fine. God bless him, I guess. But look, my point to you is that this isn't about getting Western capital. This is about global South capital, and that's why Dubai is so interested. It's interesting because you're sitting in a mall in Dubai. For those of you who don't know this, and you hear Russian, you hear Indian, you hear Mandarin, you hear English. You hear Ukrainian talking to the Russian guy, hey, how about that war? How about Shakhtar Donetsk? Good season. So what am I getting at? I'm getting at that those human beings that I'm talking about, Jacob Shapiro, have had bigger fucking problems in their life than an Iranian missile. So I would move my 3 kids in a second to Abu Dhabi tomorrow if it made sense for me commercially or whatever. I'm not going to move them tomorrow because I like where I am. I got a good job. But if things changed, zero concern about these things. But my first memory as a human being is literally an Iranian Scud flying over Baghdad because I was 2 years old, spent a year in Baghdad. Then my second memory as a human being is Yugoslavia falling apart. So obviously my threshold for what I consider insecurity is different. And what I would argue is that, what is it? 40% of human population we just cited. If we add Africa, we're getting to a point where 85% of humans on this planet do not consider what's going on in Dubai and Abu Dhabi a reason to pack up and leave. But
Yeah,
if their Dutch accountant wants to tuck tail and run, plenty of Lebanese, Syrian, Jordanian, Palestinian, Pakistani talent that can take their place. And I've got a lot of friends in the region, particularly from Lebanon, like a lot of Lebanese guys who are working there in finance. You know who you are. Shout out. Shout out to a particular Kareem that I schooled in basketball, and I'll be back for that rematch. I have it even on video. It was probably the best game I ever played. But my point is, for these people, like, this is like, inconvenience. It sucks, but it's not a reason. So what you would have to make a case for is, you would have to make a case that like UAE gets attacked and gets destroyed. I think that nothing, because the people who are there, who are storing their money there, who want to have, they're there for the governance issues that UAE controls. I will concede one thing though, where you might be right. Like, does it make sense to have an airline hub in Dubai? Like that? Hey, I'll concede that. But does it make sense to have a family office in Abu Dhabi? I would say, yeah, it really does.
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, I think your points are good and well taken. And remember, this is an overreaction. So it's an intentional overreaction to create conversation. So I don't think that this is going to change much for these places. But let me sprinkle in a few things here. First of all, the UAE is, to use another Southern aphorism, getting a little too big for its britches. With what it's doing in Sudan, with what it's fooling around with in the Horn of Africa. I mean, it doesn't, if you look at some of the reporting, Saudi Arabia denied that they were pushing the Americans and the Israelis to do this. And also the Iranians have gone after the UAE far more disproportionately compared to the other Gulf states. That says maybe they have.
Yeah. Maybe.
So maybe the UAE.
Right. Yeah, maybe they got the wrong.
So like they're a little bit more activist, and to maintain their reputation, they need to stay out of the fray, and they haven't stayed out of the fray here. So I think it's a knock on their. But your point is taken that people have a higher threshold here. So it would have to go on more than 3 weeks, and it would have to be more damage for this to meaningfully change things. But, and this is some free geopolitical analysis out there for some of the places that I'm about to name. If you are El Salvador, or if you are Istanbul, or if you are any other place. There's an opening for business here, because there is a small dent in the reputation of these places for stability all of a sudden. And I'm not saying that maybe you'll have enough of an opportunity to get it, but if I was advising Nayib Bukele, I would say stick up the flag now. You are the new Abu Dhabi / Dubai, and you are light years away from Eurasia. You have the support of the Trump administration. You're in beautiful Western Hemisphere where everything is wonderful. You've beaten back the cartels. Nobody is going to mess with you. We've got wonderful beaches. We've got volcanoes and geothermal Bitcoin. Come to town. We would love to have you and to support all of your money. I'm just saying there's some opportunities out there for those that would want to be opportunistic to say there's a weakness here and you could exploit it.
Which countries would you say could do that? What are your favorite picks? You said El Salvador?
I think El Salvador, could do it. It would take some doing for Turkey, but I think you could turn Istanbul into this type of thing. Like, you'd have to move pretty quickly, but there's no reason that Turkey, I think, couldn't play this role. I'm like really like throwing things at the wall here. Guyana in South America, with all the oil wealth that they've just got, and they're maybe going to attract other interests. Venezuela's been taken care of by the United States, so you got some stability there. That might be one. If you're Chile, like that might be it depends like who you want to invite in and how you want to do this. But there's an example of a couple countries or city states that might want to consider something like this, because there's an opportunity.
All right. So what countries would you say would be your prime candidates to replace, to take this opportunity to kind of nibble at UAE?
Yeah, I got to think about this a little bit more, but at least some of the ones that I would consider, if I was El Salvador, I would be thinking about whether this was possible. It's probably too far for Turkey to do it, although I think making Istanbul into this type of thing could be really interesting. Maybe you like turn Cyprus into something like this, although that's still a little too close to the chaos.
It got hit by a drone, but Cyprus was, for a time, particularly after the Lebanese Civil War, a lot of that capital went to Cyprus. Cyprus has its own kind of issues. And the problem with Cyprus is that it joined the EU. Now here, I think first of all, Istanbul, maybe favorite city in the world for me. So would love for that to happen. But here's the problem. Here's the truth. Here's the cold, hard truth. You need a giant current account surplus, I think, for this to really work.
Well, this is why another one on my list, I haven't developed this one yet, but I think Guyana is an interesting candidate because they've got all this new oil wealth coming online.
But look, yeah. Jacob, the problem, the fundamental problem is not geopolitics. This is one of those situations where the more you know about geopolitics might be impairing your choices.
Yeah,
politics matters kind of more. Because it's about who's going to steal your money. And the reason that UAE is a perfect place for this kind of operation is that why the hell would the 400,000 good people who are Emirates citizens want to steal your money? You know what I mean? Like, they don't need it. They good. And so when you think about like El Salvador, you're like, hey man, Bukele is like the man. You ranked him number one. God bless you. God bless him. I'm not going to really argue against it. The problem is like what happens when he gone.
Yes. No, it's
and
what happens when MBZ is gone? What happens when he does too much in his foreign policy adventuring? And
I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about it. I'm worried about maybe my condo having to replace the glass in it. From an occasional 18 months, every 18 months, like, the Iranians or Israelis, everyone's angry. But what I'm not worried about is, anybody impairing my capital that's in the place. Like that, I don't think is at risk. And I think that's credit to UAE in terms of governance, financial, private property. Like they've nailed that. And this is why I got to tell you one thing. I've been coming to UAE, I think, yearly since 2011 for work. And between 2011 and 2021, almost every single year, one of the like locals who's like, learned, connected, would sit me down and be like, look at all these condos. They're all going to zero. That's what like the locals would tell me, and all they've done is go up, man. All they've done is go up because it's like your point about Vancouver and China. Like the Chinese can just go to Vancouver. Well, not really anymore. And not just because the Canadian government and British Columbia are starting to impose some taxes. It's not just because of that. It's also because like, hey man, like it's Canada. And as much as Marko Papic gets ruffled when Trump calls it the 51st state, the Chinese agree with Trump. So they're like, why would I put all of my assets in a country that's going to have to do America's bidding? Remember was it the Xiaomi? No, Huawei. The Huawei CFO? Yeah, like everybody. I remember when that happened. I was like, ooh, probably the top in the Vancouver real estate market. Similarly, that's where Dubai, I think, will not lose that. And it's difficult to replace a place like UAE with a country that doesn't have that like domestic wealth, like just overwhelming domestic wealth. But, your point about foreign policy, to be truly neutral, you have to adopt the Marko Papic air of aloof indifference. I think that's your point. Like to be truly neutral, you cannot actually like Qatar as an alternative with its media empire, with its activism, with its very clear views on what's good governance in the Muslim world and what's bad governance in the Muslim world, I do think has impaired its ability to attract capital. What I think capital wants is for you just not to have an opinion. I have a really good friend, and I'll tell you an example of this. I have a very good friend of mine, and he runs a company, and he texted me. He's very liberal, and he texted me in the run up to the election. He was like, "I think I want to Taylor Swift it. I think I want to come out and like just publicly say who I want to vote for." He's a CEO of a tech company, and I was like, yeah, bro, like maybe don't do that. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, you run a tech company, maybe don't Taylor Swift it. She's like a billionaire and she good. He followed my advice. I think I saved him about $100 million. But what am I getting at? What am I getting at? I'm getting at is that's the approach that I think you want UAE to take.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's the approach that the UAE took until about the last couple of years.
Well,
but now,
and it's an approach that, for the most part, Switzerland took for a very long time.
And like I said, it's an overreaction. It's probably not going to happen. But like Guyana, El Salvador, just
All right, so
just remind people where you got the idea from.
Guyana, okay. Like, yes, I'm going to put my money into Guyana. That's nice.
Why not? Iran's not going to bomb them. Okay, another thing I had on. Well, do you have any overreactions, or I have another thing I wanted to bring up too?
No, bring it up. Bring it up. I will let you cook.
Okay, great. This is a quote from our Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, Viceroy of Venezuela, soon-to-be Grand Poobah of Cuba, Marco Rubio. Quote, "The president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties," end quote. Marco Rubio, thank you for setting the cause of fighting anti-Semitism back by about a century by implying that the only reason that the United States has attacked Iran is because Israel said it was going to do it first, and we had to protect U.S. soldiers to make sure that we dealt with the onslaught that was coming from Iran because Benjamin Netanyahu said that we should do this. Help me here, cousin. I don't know what to say.
No, I'm not going to help you, cousin, because you did not help me when the tribe came after me. So speaking of overreactions,
you said some not nice things about Israeli technology equipment. So you should be.
Let's get to it. First and foremost, I love the Marco Rubio thing because it's insane, right? Like, first of all, well, I mean, it's either insane or it is, or it's actually brilliant. You know, like he may just have needed to take a sip of water. Maybe that was it. Or maybe it was like, hey, look, if this goes fucking to shit, like, we're going to do whatever was done for 6,000 years. I mean, right? Like, by the way, it sets up an exit, right? So President Trump is, as you think, I think, everybody thinks, like, is going to declare victory in, like, matter of hours. And then if Israelis are like, well, okay, cool, but, like, we want to finish some shit off. He goes back to what he said last time this happened. Remember the White House lawn? The first time that an F-bomb was dropped in a press conference, he was speaking about Israel. So he was really mad that Israel continued to bomb Iran. And so this time he will say like, hey, time out. We came in here with you guys. You started it. You guys kind of be on our side now and end it. So I don't know. It's either really stupid comment or really brilliant. But yes, so I've gotten an inordinate amount of hate mail.
You should not be worried about the Russians. You should be worried about the Jews who are mad that you insulted Startup Nation.
Yeah, so Startup Nation, great book, by the way. So, yeah, because, the world needs another douchebag tech bro, but fine. So my point was that, let's just be very clear what I was saying. I was saying that GCC countries do not need to have a deal with Israel. They don't need it because at the end of the day, Israel doesn't produce anything like exclusive to other countries other than cybersecurity firms and Hamas is what I said. What I should have added to this was also raves, great raves. Nobody does a rave, beach rave like Tel Aviv. And what
I actually object to that. Like, what? Actually, this is a great question. What's the best rave you've ever been to? What country were you in at the best rave that you ever went to? He's really thinking about this one, listening.
I haven't been to that many countries, and like I haven't been to that many raves in that many countries. So like I've been to like probably Switzerland in high school.
Okay, the best rave I ever went to was in Beijing. Like the floor started rising from the middle of the dance floor, and it was like wild and crazy. Like I'm just saying the Israelis don't have like a monopoly on raves.
And that's because you're a sucker. You're a sucker for set design. I'm talking about other things, but like. We don't have to get into all of that. But look, let's just put it this way. What I'm getting at, I need more beers. Like, what I'm getting at is this. That's what I said. And then everybody came after me because it's like, you don't understand how awesome Israel is. In fact, the guy who wrote Startup Nation got linked by someone. Like,
I didn't even see that, really.
So, first of all, let me crack my knuckles here.
Please do.
So, on one of these X threads, one of these brilliant folks accused me of ignoring Israel's prowess in military technology because 91% of its exports of military go to countries outside of the US. and this is why I do what I do for a living, because I immediately sent him a chart that uses math differently, I would argue, in a way that it makes sense. Israel is 8th largest exporter of military in the world. That's amazing, top 10. But it's 3.8% of global defense exports. So, like, you know, looks to me like he could be replaced by other countries. And that's my point. Not that Israel is not awesome, but that GCC countries can probably buy shit that Israel does from someone else. The second point, and this was amazing, and I love the guy who sent this. God bless him. Beautiful soul. Love him. But he sends a breathless tweet, which is what X is made for, breathless tweeting.
Yeah.
How do you explain that TASE, the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange LTD, is up 750%? So at first, I'm like, that didn't fucking happen. But I'm staring at the snapshot he put on X. So I'm like, what? And then he says, and this was where he should have probably not done this. He says, he probably doesn't know. I wonder what his clients think of that. Ooh, brother. So I go like, wait a minute. I got the MSCI data set here. I can pull it up. And I'm like, no, the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange went up like 120%, which is top 10 performance, by the way, but like in the low top 10. South Korea, Taiwan, for obvious reasons, semiconductors have outperformed it. Spain, Italy, Greece pretty much performed as well as Israel. So I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? I can't post this on Twitter. I think my macro bond is broken. My MSCI data is wrong. And then I realize that this wonderful individual who I love, and this is why my clients are going to be okay with my services, buddy. He posted the performance of the stock ticker of the company called the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. Look, that's exactly my point. Israel's top 10. It's top 10 in military exports, top 10 in equity performance. Fucking amazing. But it's not critical to Saudi Arabia. And then when I engage in a human conversation with everyone, they realize that my point was like, look, man, there's domestic political constraints. And those domestic political constraints is the PR element of this story. So no one's like, Israel is not critical enough to any one country in the GCC for them to ignore those constraints, right? But then you got me thinking, cousin. And now I want the TikTok camera back.
Oh, it's back. It's on. It's
okay.
It hasn't been off this whole time. This is one long.
Because let me tell you something. All right. I think you all owe me an apology because I'm the only friend of Israel in this room. Because you know what friends do? You know what friends do? Friends tell you when you need to change your behavior. So do you know why I think this set off so many people, and you, including yourself? Nobody heard my argument.
I'll get to
Nobody heard my argument. Everyone's like, you're saying that Israel is not awesome. First of all, yes, it was a glib comment. Like, all Israel produces exclusive to other countries is cybersecurity and Hamas, but we are half comedy podcast, so you guys need to fucking, chill. But here's the point. Why did this get everyone so angry? And I think that because it underpins the concept that Israel is a regional hegemon. Now, I have many Israeli friends, many, including, of course, non-Israelis who are just Jews in America or Canada or elsewhere, who obviously have affinity to Israel. And many of them have started using this concept that Israel is a regional hegemon. Israel is a regional hegemon. It's a hegemon, which is an odd status for a country of 10 million people that nobody in the region actually trades with, right? So I think it would actually be the first time ever in history, or maybe a very medieval concept of a hegemon, because it basically means that it just bombs its neighbors into submission. It doesn't lull them into submission.
No, it's more imperial than it is hegemonic.
But it's not even imperial, because the imperial hegemons bomb someone and then take their shit, take their resources. Israel, in its form of hegemony, is to bomb them just to not get bombed.
Although it's starting to bomb them and take some things. Like, it's taking some little parts of Syria that it wants. It's taking some parts of Lebanon that it wants.
Territory?
The West Bank, the Gaza Strip, It tried, by the way, to take the Suez Canal, and would have if the Americans had not told them to go home.
So now I'm getting to something important. So there's a bigger issue here. I think that this narrative comes down from this recent development where basically Israel is absolutely top 5 in about 99 things we can name. 99 things we can name. I bet you randomly we say fucking 99 things. Biotechnology, agriculture, some of the things that people said on Twitter, education, VC, per capita, it's number 1.
Desalination. Yeah, there's lots of good
whatever. Whatever. Like, name anything. 99 of those things, we could probably find that Israel's top 5. But it is absolutely bottom 5 in PR. Bottom 5 in the world. And what I'm trying to say here is I think that Israelis are trying to project in their own mind to themselves, not to me, that they don't really need to worry about PR anymore. It's okay to be last in PR. Because, and this is really critical, I think what's critical to the sanity of Israelis, all of them, liberal, conservative, hawks, doves, is this idea that their strength is a sui generis strength. What sui generis means is a fancy way of saying is endogenous, internally generated. Why? Because if you're bottom 5 in PR, then the risk here is that you're going to be cut off from the flow of capital, technology, IP, and the know-how that makes you a hegemon. And so you ignore that fact and you say, no, but that's not why we're a hegemon. We're a hegemon because we fucking do everything domestically. Self-reliance. And I would say that that's a myth. I would say that 90% of the weapons being used right now are not product of self-reliance. They're product of capital that was donated by the US through defense support, and the IP and the technology is actually American. Now, Iron Dome, absolutely self-made, very little involvement by anyone else. Nobody in the world, by the way, has it, but don't forget, it's because of Israel's unique circumstances where they are at risk of very short-range missiles. It's very difficult to track them and interdict them. And so, can you actually hear me still? Oh,
yeah,
no.
I got you.
It will drop off?
No, I got you.
Okay, sorry about that. So Iron Dome is a special circumstance. And by the way, nobody in the world has anything of that quality or style. South Korea, I just found out, is apparently building one, but it'll be ready by 2035. So fine, yeah, like Iron Dome seems like a pretty important thing to have in a world of drones, by the way, and small projectiles. But my point is that I think that the reaction, what I saw in the reaction to my funny comment is actually this insecurity that, no, this is self-reliance. I don't think it is. Sorry. I disagree.
No,
I think the US, I think Israel will continue to need support from the West. And so let me just say one more thing. This is where I'm being an actual friend. When I see this Gallup poll, did you see this Gallup poll?
No, which one?
So there's a new Gallup poll. It's been basically asking Americans since like early 2000s, where do your sympathies lie in the Middle East conflict? And the last data print, this or last year, is the first time in this century that a plurality of American sympathy lies with Palestinians over Israelis. And so I think that's where the insecurity comes in. And so if I was Israel, and this is an objective fact, like here is what I would say. If Israel wants to continue to be what it calls a regional hegemon over 50 years, I think investing in technology is less relevant than investing in PR. Because a country of 10 million people has never in human history been able to defend itself from 500 million people without a lot of friends.
No, I like your psychoanalysis, and I think you've hit on something. And I'm with you some of the way here. And you're right that none of the technology only Israel has. Even Iron Dome. Like Iron Dome doesn't happen without U.S. support.
I think
I'm right about this. No, I'm pretty sure the U.S. like the interceptors and some of the other things. Like anyway, that's neither here nor there. I think it's less about like, of course, there's not technological exclusively here or exclusivity. It's not about what can't the Gulf countries buy elsewhere. It's more about what can't the Gulf countries buy elsewhere at the same speed, integration level, political flexibility. And then also, and this is where it's actually self-defeating what Israel is doing right now, it's that Israel has decades of intelligence operations and expertise against Iran and the IRGC and Hezbollah. And so if you are the Gulf countries and your biggest threat is Iran and what Iran is doing right now, there is
100%.
no country in the world that can add to the technology all of the experience that comes with missile interception, proxy warfare mapping, how to counter UAV swarms, the signals intelligence penetration, the human intelligence. When you're buying the Israeli tech here, you're not just getting access to the shiny thing, you're also getting, and here's how you use it to make sure that the Iranians can't bomb you when the Iranians come for you. And here's how you penetrate Iranian networks so you can feel these things. So as long as Iran is a big enemy to the Gulf states, then I think Israel actually is indispensable because they're the ones with the intel, they're the ones with the experience, and the only ones who can make this technology optimized for the threat. Ironically, though, as soon as you end the Iranian threat, then they really don't need you because then you actually don't have the expertise that they need. And maybe you're not even talking about the right threats that they need, because then maybe we're talking about Turkey as a hegemon, or they can indulge in their personal opinions and not be bartering with you about Iron Dome. And then maybe in the meantime, they're reverse engineering things, or they can go to the South Koreans or everybody else, which goes to your question, by the way, about that poll. I think one of the reasons Netanyahu was pushing so hard is because I think this is right. This was the last chance, because there's not going to be a future U.S. administration that's going to be willing to do this. And this is why I think the PR doesn't matter at all. The most important thing that Israel did, arguably, in the last couple of weeks was that meeting with Narendra Modi last week. And Netanyahu saying, hey, I want to wind down U.S. support and investment, that we don't want to be continuing to take all this money from the United States. I think Netanyahu is saying, you know what? We've been the U.S. security. They've been our patron since 1967. By the way, they weren't before 67. The reason Israel has nukes is thanks to the French. So if you have problems with the Israel nuclear program, you can go to the French. Like, we can go through a whole thing here.
Yeah.
And I think Israel is recognizing we're going to need new allies here. And who better than India?
Soviet Union too.
Maybe we'll share our defense. Yes. Soviet Union and black market trade, blah, 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 like after 48. But like, if you're Israel and you need an alternative, who's going to make your defense tech, where are you going to do some of these things? India is a great option, great way to balance against China, which is aligned with the Gulf states and things like that. And then you also got to think about the role of Turkey here. So I think there's some interesting things happening. And ironically for Israel, the less that Iran is a threat, the more these Gulf countries, I think, can afford not to do business with Israel. And that's an interesting catch-22, because Iran, like, maybe we're proving Iran is a threat, is not a threat. I don't know. But that's where I would land on the Israeli tech thing. I agree with you. So,
but it's a tough,
in a way.
But listen, I'm being very elegant. It's a tough argument.
I'm trying to thread a needle.
No, I mean, I think it's tough because I agree with you. Obviously, Israeli ability to to toy with Iran is like legendary. This is like Sparta versus Persia stuff.
Well, and not just
the
Iran,
issue,
like
though, is that
like Shiite dissidents in your country. If you're Saudi Arabia and you're worried about the Shiite dissidents in the oil fields and things like that, if you're in Bahrain and you're worried about the population,
I don't know.
You're worried about the Houthis. Like, who's got the capabilities here? Who's sharing with you the capabilities to go after these?
The Chinese. The Chinese know how to repress domestic minorities or whatever. And look, the reason that what an Emirati would counter, let me put on that role here, would just say, like, yeah, but we were figuring it out fine with Iran until you bombed him. So it's like you're creating the fire that I have to pay you then to put out. And this is my point, by the way. My initial point with this, I have a pet peeve, by the way, with takes that the learned elites of America have just decided to swallow whole. So like this notion that you and I both are aghast at, that it's all about China. This is starting to become the sexy argument. Venezuela, Iran, it's all similarly just like, oh, they can't wait to make a deal with Israel. It's like, well, have you gone to UAE or Saudi Arabia? They're not in a rush to make a deal with Israel. Like, obviously it's beneficial. No one argues against that. My point is the benefit of getting a deal with Israel, does it overcome the potential domestic political problems? And for UAE, the answer is yes, because Emirati population is small and they're well off. For Saudi Arabia, the answer is absolutely not. it's still an issue. And Saudi Arabia would answer to you also, like, we got it. We got if we can handle the domestic Sunni militants, we got everyone else. You know what I mean? If we could kick out the Wahhabis, we got this. And so, no, you got to step our way too. But one thing I will say is, like, replacing the entirety of the West with India. The only problem with that is that I think that the knowledge transfer, the integration of this Israeli society into the West, I do think that something will be lost if Israel is less Western.
Yeah. I agree.
I mean, that's, I think, my quality of life, my friends who live in Israel and want to move, because it may be less liberal. Like, those things, I think, matter for a country of 10 million people. And the fact of the matter is, there's two things that have made Israel, quote unquote, a regional hegemon. I think it's absolutely supportive of the West from a technological perspective. And the second is, like, the ingenuity of the human capital domestically.
Yeah.
And part of that ingenuity is that Israel is the best place to live. I think top 10 place. Yeah, like, all the things that Israel is top 10 in, like, that's one of the things. The quality of life is really high. And, that could change if Israel decides that, like, yeah, we don't really care what those, like, weak liberals in the West think of us. Well, okay, cool. Align with India then. Let's see how much talent you attract.
And the brain drain is real. Like, the folks who are creating all this technology are the secular, relatively liberal, probably more left-leaning, although that's probably painting with too broad a brush. And those people want to leave. The founders of Israel, thought that the ultra-religious portion of the population was going to die out within a couple of years or maybe a decade. That's one of the reasons they gave them exemptions on military service and a bunch of other things. Joke's on them. They're breeding like crazy. I forget what the exact numbers are, but they're like 15, 20% of the population. Then you've got a Muslim set of the population that none of the other parties want to work with. And that the number of people who are actually in that class that create this technology is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and many of them are leaving. So you can't replace, like, the things that created the technology and have it continue over time. I actually think Taiwan is an interesting metaphor here, because Taiwan only exists as this semiconductor superpower.
It's a great,
because it was like, Silicon Valley guys were going there, and it was the center of all these things, and the US hegemon was there, and China was not a threat. So you had this specific moment in time where Taiwan could become what it is, and it was never going to hold. The same is true for Israel. It's not going to hold. And I think that's actually the thing.
I don't know if it's not going to hold.
You're getting to with the psychoanalysis. Like, maybe they can last 50 years, maybe 100, but there's a reason that the number of times that there's a Jewish sovereign polity in what is today the land of Israel, it's not often in history that this happens. It's a very special, ideal set of circumstances that have to happen for that country to obtain. And the only rejoinder, I think, to that is they have nukes.
Well, of course.
I don't know how to work that into the model. So,
well, no, but that's why Israel should have nukes. I mean,
yep.
That's and that's the case for many other countries to have nukes. I would say that maybe Taiwan is not my favorite example. I think South Korea, just because, like, I think Israel just punches. It's not just semiconductors, Taiwan seems a little bit like a one-trick pony. I think Israel is more broader than that. Like, South Korea has a defense industry that's really sophisticated and so on. I think the question here is not about whether Israel is going to be safe in the Middle East. I don't think there's any question to me about that, because it has nuclear weapons, and I think that Israel can be safe in the Middle East, even if it slips from top 10 ranking on 99 different things. I think that's a solved conversation. I think Israel is going to be safe in the Middle East. The question is, to me, is it going to retain that kind of, like, stock market performance that the Twitter crowds were getting at me for? Is it going to be a top 10 quality of life? I mean, it's a top 10 GDP per capita country on the planet. Like, I mean, if you take out, like, Lilliputian states like Monaco or Liechtenstein, it's a top 10 GDP per capita country. It's top 10 in technological innovation. It's top 10 in quality of life. And that's, I think, the question. And I think if it just ignores everyone in the West as just, liberal anti-Semites, I think that I think it's painting the West with too broad of a brush. And that's why, like, fine, Spain criticizing Israel can be, I think, dismissed. But when you see that chart, the Gallup poll, that's a really shocking reversal. And
Yeah.
then the way you overcome that psychologically just is say, well, it doesn't matter. We good. We don't need you anywhere.
This is why, by the way, why World War Z is amazing for lots of reasons, but the story of Israel being one of the last holdouts against the zombies, they eventually get overrun. Like the technology allows them to exist for a while, but eventually, like the zombies.
Wait, isn't it only the
zombies come.
Cubans that, like, Cuba becomes a superpower, right? Because they're like an island or something?
I forget. I forget. I don't remember.
By the way, if
where
you guys
Cuba
don't know
was
what
or
we're
whatever.
talking about, we're talking about Mel Brooks' son.
I didn't know it was Mel Brooks' son, is it?
Yeah, so World War Z is a book. It was actually recommended to me by both of our former colleague, Peter Zion. He gave me the book and he was like, bro, like, I know you're going to think I'm insane, but this is like the best book ever. And I was like, cool, interesting. It's about zombies. So who was it written by?
You're right. It was Max Brooks. I had no idea that it was Mel
So
Brooks'
Max
son.
Brooks writes this book and it's written great. It's like kind of the Saturating blog that broke the tech stocks, It's written from a future. It's a UN rapporteur going around the decimated world trying to figure out how this happened. Obviously, the virus starts in China. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Max Brooks didn't get the memo that was racist. So the virus starts in China, and then various countries have different responses to it. And yes, Israel was one of the holdouts, but it does get overrun. Cuba becomes the world power, which was interesting. I don't remember why. I think maybe just because they're an island. Oh, and they just like enforced the total embargo, obviously, and they've been working. Like they had like a head start because they've been keeping the boats from Miami coming in.
Okay. Well, speaking of the last thing that was on my list, I don't know if you have anything else, but the last thing I just saw was let's see. Oh, yes. This is from Reuters. The Trump administration is building a legal case against Venezuelan interim president Delcy Rodriguez, including drafting a criminal indictment about corruption and money laundering charges. The goal being to use this to strengthen its leverage over Caracas. Not anymore. We're preparing an indictment against her because just in case she doesn't do what we want her to do.
Oh, nice. Yes. Regime calibration, not regime change.
No, I really, maybe I'm being too sanguine here, and maybe we're going to get an energy crisis and everything else, but I really do think it's going to be mission accomplished in 2 to 3 weeks' time. Take a deep breath, a little bit of a break, and then on to Cuba. I think that's the.
I think it's going to be earlier than that. I think it's going to be mission accomplished in days.
Days.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And then I think the question is going to be like if Iran actually says, fine, we'll do it. Or if they have to show that they're willing to incur a little bit more pain. So to me, the problem right now is that most of my clients are asking, when does Trump do what he always kind of does?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is like, when Trump is facing off against the prime minister of Denmark, none of us really care what the prime minister of Denmark does. When he's facing off against prime minister of Canada, like we're always waiting for Trump to back off of the tariffs, to back off of threats, because the counterparts are seen as like, well, they're obviously just take it. With Iran, I do think they will take it. But I think that the question is, of course, like, but do they take it right away? And then if they don't take it right away, does that tip Trump into more? And then also Benjamin Netanyahu, who clearly has proven that he has complete free reign. There's nothing impeding Israel from attack other than Trump doing what he did last year, where he gets angry. So I think that there's a little bit more actors this time around than just Trump.
Yeah. And there's also, the Iranian regime looks coherent, and I think it's going to be coherent. But if it is wrapped up in days or in weeks, then the question does turn to Iran, because I think people are thinking that there's a chance of regime collapse in Iran now. And I think that's off the table. I think they tried and they failed. What'll be interesting to see is once this is over, and once Iran no longer has the war to rally around, and then all the factions are looking at each other, can they keep it going for 12 months from now? Because there's a world in which, okay, it's over, Trump is mission accomplished, everything looks okay, but Iran has been destroyed. And without the war, the factions start to come out and the warlords come out, and the nightmare scenario that you're talking about, maybe it doesn't happen this month or next month, but maybe 8 months from now, we are talking about an Iranian civil war.
Absolutely. And let's really develop that later, because this is my experience from Serbia, for example. It wasn't a NATO bombing, it was 18 months later. This is the case in a lot of places as well. And this is where Israel, would really do itself a disservice if it continued the conflict forever.
Yeah.
Like I still believe that there's absolutely no chance that people of Iran are going to revolt with like Israeli Air Force providing air cover. There's just too many decades of constant brainwashing that Israel is the enemy. It's just not going to happen. So like, if Israel really wants like regime change, hit Iran very hard, which what Israel is doing, and then back off and just let it kind of slide into that. I don't see any other alternative.
Yeah. All right. We did we do it? Anything else?
I think that's it.
That's it. All right. Listeners, we'll be back soon. Cheers.